Alabama wins an absolute thriller in Coleman Coliseum last night.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is awesome, and I'll tell you about them a little bit later on. And thank you for making this your first listen every single day. Jimmy, last night in Coleman Coliseum, it was a nail-biter, literally. Florida, Alabama go head-to-head. Florida, one of the hotter teams in the country, playing super well. They come in. Frankly, they take the lead when it's about tied at 20, something like that in the first half, and you felt like they were never going to surrender it. Alabama would get close. Florida would push it back out. At one time, it was 72-62, and I was thinking, crap, there goes our home winning streak. But Alabama's able to pull it out, and it really wasn't because of Mark Sears. Mark Sears had an okay game. He didn't have a great game. He didn't score as much. He had some assists and rebounds. That was fantastic. But it was really people like Eastrada, who came on late, especially in overtime. Rylan Griffin, who I thought had a pretty blah game up until overtime, and then he hit some big shots, played some nice D all game long. And Sam Walters and Grant Nelson. Boy, if it hadn't been for Grant Nelson early in the game, Alabama would have been in trouble. And he hits a big three late in the contest too. But overall, Alabama, big win, especially considering Reitzel was out due to a concussion.
Really was. Florida's a really good team. I think Florida's I knew they were good, but after seeing them in person, they're even better than I thought. I mean, they're a team that I think is going to be very difficult to knock out of the NCAA tournament when that rolls around. Really outstanding team. Great effort by Alabama last night. I thought it was an effort, blue-collar type win. It took a lot of scrappiness. It took a lot of extra effort. The rebounding from the guard position was just outstanding. Probably Grant Nelson's best SEC game. Again, he did it all on effort. Eastrada, great in the overtime. Huge win for Alabama. If you want to win the SEC, that means winning your games at home and also stealing wins on the road. I think somehow, some way, Luke, Alabama can win the SEC. 2 road games coming up. I think going 1-1. I mean, obviously, you'd love to go 2-0. I think going 1-1 is critical in these next 2 road games in terms of winning the league.
I totally agree. Alabama got a little help last night with LSU defeating Kentucky on a last-second shot. I mean, I say they got a little help. I don't know what that's going to do for Kentucky coming out Saturday. I mean, maybe I read too much into that, but it may make Kentucky even that much more desperate, which, again, could be a positive or a negative. I don't know. I know that game's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday, 2 of the higher-scoring teams in the country. Alabama averaging like 102 points per game right now over this 3-game stretch. That I want to say it again, we're the most fun team in the country. Now, there's some things that we don't do great. I mean, we started out, boy, were we putrid behind the 3-point line. And, though when I was watching it, they could never pull away. Florida could never really pull away. Now, they got the lead to 10, maybe even 11 at one point, but they just couldn't shake us. And that's the mark of a fantastic team. I thought that this team has sort of a stick-to-itiveness that is imperative to winning, especially come March. And I think it's huge that you can get a win when you don't play your best. If that game had been in Gainesville, I think they probably would have run us out of the gym. Hopefully we can play a little better when we travel to Gainesville in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Florida, it's going to be an incredibly difficult game down there. Florida, I think maybe, Luke, has the best combination of front court and back court. I mean, a lot of the teams we play, they're really good at one or the other. I think Florida's really good up front with 3 guys that are near 7 foot. And they're skilled dudes, but their backcourt is really good too. Just a deep team. I'm really impressed. I saw them play early in the season and didn't really think they were much of a contender. But boy, I think after losing their first 2, they were 8-3 going into last night. With the only losses being road losses to really good teams, and now it's a road loss to another really good team in Alabama. But Florida's very good, Luke. they're not a team I want to run into in the SEC tournament, in Nashville. But heck, I mean, who do you want to play up there?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Missouri,
true.
maybe Missouri. I mean,
We ain't getting Missouri.
We ain't getting Missouri.
Now, Missouri ain't getting past that Wednesday night game, but Florida had lost a home game to Kentucky, but they won the return game, so it sort of washed, and they do have 5 losses in the conference now. Again, that's I didn't even think about that. I thought about how LSU's beating Kentucky helped Alabama. I didn't even think about it also really helped us out with Florida because they were kind of hot on our tail, only a couple of games behind too, and now they're 3 games behind. So again, just a huge win last night. Sam Walters, need to talk about him. This guy is really coming on. Boy, when we couldn't throw it in the ocean, Sam Walters was able to take the lid off for just a minute at least, and he's really playing well. Really appreciate what Sam Walters is contributing to the team right now. Can't go without talking about the Muhammad Wague elbow to the head or forearm to the head, whatever it was. There's no place for that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a report out there by Mike Rodak. I don't know if it's valid or not, that he will be suspended for a game or maybe multiple games. I get it. I wish he wasn't. I hate it. I don't think it means he's a bad kid. I don't think it means he's a horrible person. I just think, he's also the same one that tried to trip up Janai Broome earlier against Auburn. It's just one of those things where I think he's he can be sort of a street ball guy occasionally, like rough and tumble. And you can't do that though. I mean, there's just no place for it. Again, a lot of people on Twitter are going nuts, calling him the most disgusting play they've ever seen. Come on. It was bad. I'm not going to say it wasn't. And I think he deserves a punishment. I really do. And I hate saying that, but I believe it.
Yeah, I don't hate saying it as much. I think it's time to take the Homer hat off. I mean, there's no place for that in college basketball. We would all be furious if it happened to one of our players. We'd be mad about it, wanting a suspension. Period. It's not that wasn't a basketball move. That wasn't aggressive basketball. And if I don't care how long the suspension is. I mean, I'm sure 5-8 games, that's a little much, but I'm just saying if it's multiple games, I get it. And this is the thing I would encourage, though, on the other end, like you're saying, it doesn't mean he's a terrible person. Once the suspension is over, it's over. That's the whole purpose of punishment. Somebody does something wrong and it's bad, and you send the message that, hey, in the future, guys, you do stuff like this, this is the punishment for it. So maybe you ought not do that stuff because you don't want to miss 2 games, 3 games with your teammates. So my feeling as Alabama fans we should accept that punishment as being reasonable for whatever it is. And then when it's over, it's over. You welcome him back, and everybody's learned a lesson here. And, thankfully the kid from Florida is not hurt or anything like that. But, I think you suspend him and you sit him in the corners. You put him in timeout. Like you might do with a kid in your house. You put him in timeout, but when it's over, it's over. Just like with your kid, when you punish your kid, you spank them, you put them in timeout, you take away their phone for a day or whatever it is. But when it's over, it's got to be over. And it's over.
And let me say this, Jimmy. Here's what I hope. I don't know that this will happen. I'm fine if we never find out that this happens. I just hope it happens. I would like to know that Muhammad Wague apologized to the Florida player, at least on some kind of personal level. And I think that would be a big deal. I don't care if we ever find out that actually happened. I just sort of hope that happens. Again, I don't think Muhammad Wague is the worst person that's ever walked the face of the earth. He deserves a punishment. And Jimmy's right. When that punishment is over, let's move on. But the bad news for Wague is that we do go to Florida, and you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to have a target on his back. And
that would be a nice game for one of the suspensions. Hopefully they'll.
That's what I swear I was like, if Nate Oates said, "Hey, I'm suspending him for the Florida game," I think a lot of people go, "Oh, you just want him to play against Kentucky." I don't know. I think that would be even more appropriate to say he's just not playing against Florida next time.
Be brutally honest. I mean, the way that the kid's played lately, whether he plays or not against Kentucky is not going to make much of a difference. I'm saying that to encourage and motivate the kid. He hasn't been a huge help lately, to be honest, but I know he's capable of it because there were games early in the season where I felt we were successful in part because of some valuable minutes he was giving us. But lately it's really been Pringle that's been more of a help at that position for us, or in that role, and not Mo. Maybe in some ways the suspension might help him get back on track a little bit because, hey, it's all hands on deck when you get to the postseason. You need minutes, good minutes from anyone that sees the floor, and Wague is going to see the floor. So people that would pick and choose and say, oh, well, you just don't want him suspended for this game or that game, they just don't know our roster very well.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Eli Gold, and was Eli Gold rushed out? You see what I did there with the gold rush thing? Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much, much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You ain't burning cash, bro. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Jimmy. I took some heat on this program after the Gravedigger call from Eli Gold, saying I kind of wish Chris Stewart had made that call. A lot of people out there love Eli Gold. I get it. I appreciate what Eli Gold has provided to the University of Alabama. I do. I think he is so well spoken and articulate, maybe to a fault sometimes. And he obviously loves the University of Alabama. I appreciate all that. I understand some people are upset about this. Chris Childers on Sirius XM radio, he just said he was livid about it. Now Chris Childers, I think, is getting a graduate degree at Alabama right now. I'm not livid. I'm not. I would have been okay if Eli had come back, but I'm also okay that Chris Stewart is moving in. Here's what I hope that the Alabama fan base can get behind. Instead of being mad that Eli was maybe unceremoniously pushed out, let's be happy for Chris Stewart. This Chris Stewart is a dude who loves the University of Alabama with all of his fiber of his being. I can promise you this. I know him personally. Jimmy, you know him personally. We know what he thinks of the University of Alabama. We know what it means to him. And his enthusiasm is incredible. He is a homer just enough for me. I'm completely biased as a Bammer myself, but I look back at some of the other homers out there for rival teams, and I go, they're too homerish. Now, maybe for their fan base, they're perfect. I get it. Chris Stewart is that way for me. He tells it like it is, but he also, man, he is quick-witted. He's sharp as a tack, and it's going to be different because Eli is more. And once again, Alabama ascends to college football's mountaintop. That's not going to be what Chris Stewart says. Chris Stewart's going to go, oh, hell yeah, roll tide. We want another one. I see the positives to both. I'm more Chris Stewart myself. I don't know about you, Jimmy, but I'm more excited for Chris Stewart than I am mad about anything that happened to Eli.
Yeah, I'm not mad about anything at all, and I am excited for Chris. I'll talk about that. But here's one about people that are angry. I do think that people need to realize, or in my mind anyway, there's a difference between being fired and your contract not being renewed. To me, that's different. Fired means we are not happy with the job you've done to the point we don't want you to finish it. Well, Eli finished a contract that I believe is up now or within the next few weeks. His contract is up. Alabama's just deciding not to negotiate and renew and extend a contract. That's a different decision than we don't like the job you're doing. You need to leave right now. That's not what happened. So I think to that extent, people should be more accepting of, hey, at some point this had to happen. I mean, at some point it had to happen, right? He couldn't do it till he's 103.
He did say, I don't mean to cut you off. He did say, like, today, hey, I plan to do it for another 10 more years. And look, I don't mean this in a mean way. And there's some people like Eli deserved the right to go out whenever he wanted to. I don't agree with that. And I didn't want him to do another 10 years, because that means 10 years I don't get to hear Chris Stewart's enthusiasm. And it's okay to appreciate Eli, what he did, and understand that he was really good at his job, and also be excited for the future. So, and frankly, what better time to hit reboot? We got a new coach, we got a new staff, we got a new attitude, we got a new everything. I loved everything we had, but we don't have it anymore. Let's embrace what we're getting.
That's exactly right. And just the very fact that you just, that was a great point about you made. He said he wanted to do another 10 years. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I mean, I would hope anyone would realize, boy, at his age, and you lose your fastball when you get older. I mean, we all do. And the idea that would go on for another 10 years. I mean, you have to make the change at some point, and you've got the right guy in-house. I mean, you've got the right guy right now. Who knows where Chris Stewart might be in 10 years? I mean, you get Chris Stewart locked in right now, very popular with people. Again, Luke and I do know him personally, and get full of Alabama, just like Luke and I and everyone that listens to our show. I mean, he's one of us, right? And, I appreciate Eli. Eli is Alabama history. I mean, to me, Eli is the soundtrack to the Saban era, the whole Nick Saban era, captured on every Saturday by the voice of Eli Gold. That's going to live forever and ever. Those clips, those play-by-play of the big moments. So I truly appreciate Eli as a pillar. He's a rock that's in the mountain of Alabama history. But there comes a time, just like there came a time for Coach Saban, there comes a time for everybody, and Alabama just chose not to renew or negotiate a new deal. They decided that going forward with Chris Stewart is the right move, and I get that. So really appreciate Eli Gold for his years of service and how excellent he was in doing the job when he did it. But I'm looking forward to good times ahead with Chris.
Me too. And very quickly to end this, again, we can't say enough. We appreciate what Eli did. We know a lot of people out there have been putting all these clips out, and that's wonderful. And they're memories for me too. I totally understand. However, I don't know how much Greg Byrne actually had to do with this decision. I think that he probably had some input. It probably wasn't ultimately his decision. There's Crimson Tide Sports Network somewhere. My dad asked me today, like, whose decision was this? I was like, frankly, I'm not sure. But it doesn't matter. I mean, essentially the university said, we're going to go in a different direction. And, Greg Byrne did have some input, I'm sure, to this. Let's also remember Greg Byrne's done some things like he hired Kalen DeBoer. He hired Nate Oates. Greg Byrne's made some pretty good moves lately. He seems to have his finger on the pulse of success. So let's let Greg Byrne run this ship a little bit. And if you want, I just wish less people were less mad about it and more, hey, Eli, thank you so much. And that frankly goes for Eli too. I mean, Eli seems to be a little taking it a little bit rougher than I wish he would. I understand it's not me that got canceled. So, I mean, I shouldn't be talking about that, but if Locked On ever comes to me and says, you have a permanent frown and you are
with Chris, Luke.
we're going with Chris Stewart. I hope that what I do is say, man, I appreciate all the times I had on Locked On and I loved all of you. And what I'll do is check Jimmy and say, I know you did this, and revenge is served cold. But anyway, look, when we come back.
Me and Chris over a bottle of wine plotted the scheme.
When we come back, we're going to talk about, are we expanded the playoffs again already? But now, I got to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel is just awesome. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go check it out. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's amazing. You can't beat that with a stick. That's $150 if your bet wins. I'm talking about a $5 bet, people. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with bets like quick bets or live same game parlays. Those are fantastic. Exclusive props on players or teams and much, much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. You're going to love it. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. I would love to say I hate to say I told you so, but I don't hate to say I told you so. I'm happy I've told you so. Jimmy told you so too, that when we expanded the playoffs to 12, we said they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. They're already talking about taking it to 14 in 2026. And look, I understand we live in a time when like everybody needs ultimate satisfaction immediately about everything. And so nobody has any patience. As I talked about the Saban Legacy Awards the other night, Frank Beamer started out his career at like 40-20 at Virginia Tech in 6 years. He never would have made it now. If you go 5-7 in year one, people are already calling for your head, no matter what the situation you walked into is. And so now everybody's like, we got to have this playoff. So the playoffs mean more at the end. Well, to me, college football has always been beautiful because of the Saturdays in the fall, not the games in late January. The beautiful thing about college football is October, is the first November, September. Those are the times. But now what we're going to do is we're going to push this thing to 14 potentially, away from. We haven't even seen how 12 does yet. We haven't even seen it. We don't know what the 12-team playoff will do yet. And we're already talking about expanding it some more. And it's not going to stop expanding because that's where some money's going to be. And so it's not going to quit expanding until the money goes away. But by the time the money goes away, people are going to be losing interest, if you ask me. Now, somebody's going to say, well, in the NFL, they have that's right. And as Nick Saban said this at the Legacy Awards the other night. He said, in the NFL, you know what the NFL wants? Every single team to go 8-8. And by the last game of the year, everybody's got a shot to get in the playoffs. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? A bunch of middling teams playing for a national championship? I don't. They're talking about expanding the NCAA basketball tournament to 90-something teams. For the love of God, people, can we quit with the participation trophies? I mean, it's not, and people will say, well, you just don't like more football. No, I like more football. I'm fine with bowl games. And I understand bowl games don't mean is what they used to. Maybe we can tweak that somehow. But the answer isn't just putting everybody in there, making the regular season a non-factor, and then saying, okay, playoffs are all that matters. That's what worries me.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw this coming. I even remember saying when we went from 2 to 4 that it wouldn't stop until there was 16, and probably that would only be a pause. And I still believe that even as that 14 number is floated yesterday, that means 16 is around the corner. I do think 16 will kind of be the stopping point, at least for a while, because it's such a good number to have a tournament. But, I hate it because, when it was only 2 and 4 teams, Luke, college football had the best regular season in all of sports. Basketball, baseball, pro, college. It was the best regular season because it was like, you better finish 12-0 or it's out of your hands. And that means you played for the national championship 12 times, before you even got to the postseason. The ultimate postseason, right? It started September 1st. But now we've lost that because now that you've gone to 14, this is a guarantee, Luke. This is a guarantee. Now that you're going to be at 14, 9-3 gets you in. 9-3 in the Big Ten or the SEC will get you in. And hey, it stinks to say this out loud, but think about this, people. Do you even want Alabama assured of a spot in the postseason when you've lost to Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee? You lost to Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee.
And didn't play for the SEC title game.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that you lost to all of your rivals and it's 9-3. You still get to play for the national championship. Hey, that might work in the NFL where you can be 10-7 and get a wild card, and then next thing you know, you're in the Super Bowl. it just makes college football like every other sport. It devalues the regular season. It devalues the regular season loss. It means less. It means those September. Look, I mean, it's even the case this year. Part of why Alabama, Georgia won't be the greatest thing that ever happened. Now, it's going to be a big game, and we want to win, and our kids are going to put out 100% effort, Luke. But a part of the reason it won't be the greatest regular season game ever is because it doesn't really matter who wins, because the loser of Alabama, Georgia is still very, very likely to make the playoff, or at least likely. And that's why as soon as it's over, 3 minutes after it's over, what would we say if we lost? Well, we're going to get another shot at them. You know,
Yep.
Same thing Georgia's going to say if Alabama ends up on top in that game. So, and that is only going to get worse as we move to 14 teams and then 16 teams. So I don't like it, but there's nothing we can do to stop it, because all these commissioners are sitting down with the TV people, ESPN, Fox, all of them. They sit down and they're like, what can we do to maximize the money you are giving us? And they tell us, and then college football says, happy to do it. Because and hey, that's the real world. That's the real world that we're
Jimmy,
in. I get it.
And I understand we're moving more and more towards NFL, and it's a train we cannot stop. And I like the NFL. I enjoy watching the NFL. But let's also say the NFL is pretty cookie cutter. Every game starts at noon, and every game starts at 3:30. And then we have a night game that starts at 7:15. And all the division winners get to go to the playoffs no matter how crappy they are. I mean, Danny Cannell said something about that today. Why don't we just have why don't the SEC, and the ACC and whatever, they play their conference championship games, and the winners of that just go to the playoffs, and that's it. And then you have, I'm like, because the winner of the Big 12 is not as good as the third or fourth place team in the SEC. You don't have. And he goes, well, what about the losses? They're not playing the same schedules. Yeah. And look, I'm worried to death that we're going to end up at like 24 teams or whatever it is. And then we're going to go to 96 teams in basketball. And I'm still going to watch it. I'm not saying I'm boycotting it. I'm just saying, man, I'm going to miss, like you said, the intensity of the regular season. The intensity in the regular season of the NFL doesn't come close to the intensity of the intensity of the NBA in the regular season is god awful.
Correct.
God awful until the very end of the season. That's the only time it matters, because then everybody's played 70-something games, and you're only 2 games back.
NBA regular season that viewership isn't great either.
No, it's putrid.
The night that South Carolina played LSU in women's college basketball, it outdrew the NBA game that was on TNT.
And I'm not taking a shot at women's basketball, but that's a problem if you're thinking.
As an example of, here's a regular season that doesn't matter a whole lot. If I said college football is the best regular season, who has the worst regular season? I would argue that it is NBA basketball, because everybody makes the playoffs, and the mantra is nobody tries until the postseason, and you got all these players that sit out because they're worried about their load or whatever they're calling it now. And
got to be a better way to say that.
That is a terrible thing to say.
But I don't like baseball. But see, baseball's regular season, though it is way too long and
it is
pretty mundane, the thing about baseball's regular season is, like, we all know this. And so you can just go to a baseball game and relax. And if your team loses, you're like, that's one of 162 games. I'm not worried about it.
True, but they still don't have a lot of teams that make the playoffs.
True.
So that matters for that reason. That matters.
Even though they're trending that way too.
Correct.
But the NBA regular season is like, it's sort of a pain in the butt to go to a game. For instance, and we're getting off on a tangent, that All-Star game was unwatchable. It used to be my favorite All-Star game. It is unwatchable. Like this, y'all just need to quit having it. And finally, Jimmy, for the love of all things holy, Nate Oates, I love you. I want you to sign a lifetime contract. I also want you to burn that coat you wore last night. Burn it with holy water and gasoline and unholy water. I don't care. I've always wondered, Jimmy, I'm sort of a funky sport coat guy because I got a long torso, short legs, got a weird frame. And so I think funky coats look good on me, not regular, just blue blazers. That coat was too funky for me.
It gave 70s Chevrolet seat cushions a bad name.
Oh, it really did. That was bad, man. I was like, I once had a couch like that when I was in college. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's podcast. Well, you know what, guys? Let me give it a little announcement. We're swapping over from Megaphone to Simplecast. This is a company-wide thing. So I don't think we'll have a podcast tomorrow, or don't think we'll have one this weekend, because we've been told, hey, don't do your podcast till Monday. So this will be the last one for the weekend. Y'all, please do subscribe. We appreciate you. Next week, we can't wait to talk to you about more stuff. But until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.